Welcome to a beginner's guide to bartering in Black Desert Online. Before I begin, I'd like to recommend a few websites, one being Grumpy Green. It's a very comprehensive site to learn about bartering, sailing, and almost anything Black Desert Online related. Specifically for bartering, I'd highly recommend visiting the Sailing Discord. This video itself will basically be limited to bartering itself, so we'll only touch on relevant areas about sailing, not sailing comprehensively, and we also won't be talking about things like ship PvP. So first off, first things first, what is bartering, or how does bartering work? So in a nutshell, you're exchanging a cheaper item for a more expensive item, or items I should say, and then taking those items, trading them for even more expensive items, and so on and so forth for about 5 levels until you hit the most expensive item, which can in turn be sold or traded for ship upgrade materials. Now you might ask, okay, well, why barter? Well, there's a couple of good reasons. One, which is kind of a true, but I say is tax evasion. So, as you know, selling items on the central market, you're subject to, what's equivalent to a 15% tax, even with the value pack, which gives you the bonus silver. If you don't have the value pack, it's even worse. The other thing that is good about bartering is there's no such thing as really duel for spot. You are essentially going from node to node. It's more of you figuring out a logic puzzle as opposed to competing with another player for killing mobs. Uh, what's really great about bartering, if once you crunch the numbers, is you're essentially looking at a 1 to 90 payout. So for every million or so that you invest for the initial normal items, you are getting at like a guaranteed 90 million payout if you use the max ratio barters. And the final thing that I would say is great about bartering is the semi AFK play. So you're not investing as much focus or concentration as someone who's actively, grinding mobs. Now, obviously there are exceptions to the rule, but I would say in large part you can essentially barter and then on a second screen watch a movie, read a book, or walk out of a room, make yourself a drink. You get the idea. So that's a really great place. Great thing about bartering is you don't have to be as focused on the activity as you would need to be for making, I would say, better, but not that much better money in terms of efficiency or amount of concentration per silver. The next question that I'd like to address is, well, what class would be the best for bartering? Now, generally speaking, any class is good. Corsairs have the, I guess you could say, perk of having 1% additional stat bonuses to all big ships. This is helpful. It's equivalent to having 50 extra mastery. So if you like going a bit faster, that's always welcome there. If you want to, for example, have a shorter distance between you and the Wharf Manager, there's always the lawn. You can just fly off your ship and then fly right back on. My personal favorite, of course, is the Shy, based because of the carry weight. And then I also like to joke that the Shy is more aerodynamic, which eventually that might be true. What ship would you like to pick for bartering? Now, this one's a little bit easier in terms of what to pick. I would say stick with an advance if bartering is your goal. If you plan to do other things like ship PvP or hunting monsters, that's where you roll a second ship that's either a Volante or Valor to just focus on the combat aspects of things. But again, out of scope for what we're talking about in this video. What's very helpful here are the daily Sailies. So when you want to get your Carrick upgrades, you can go over and get that done over there. Some tips I would say for bartering is I would say absolutely calculate the number of normal exchanges that you have. So you do this by taking 1,000,000 and then dividing it by whatever your parlay cost is per normal exchange. So for example, Mastery 16 or so, let's say my parlay costs 11,618 per exchange. So I take 1,000,000 divided by 11,618 and I get 86 barters. Unfortunately, you have to round down. If, of course, you're not limited by the million, you can use what are called Trade Vouchers, which you obtain by using the manufacture function on item scrolls. These have a 4-hour cooldown, but they do give you 250k in parlay, so those are very handy. The next tip I would say is island hopping. So this is where you plan out your route, where you take one item and have the next exchange island somewhere along your route. You can exchange there while keeping in mind that you want to keep under the weight limit for whatever it is that you're trying to trade, or at the very least having a short hop to the nearest wharf manager so that you can unload or sell what you need to sell. Speaking of which, another tip here is wharf managers are your friends, so know where they are. There's one, Gafur is just north of Paddocks on Pirate Island. Then there's also Bolhi on Lima. And then, of course, there is your wharf manager out of your home base in Ilya. And then there's the two wharf managers that are at Portaferia and Velia, respectively. So know where those are. Try to use those as sort of, rest areas, stopping points, exchange points. You can obviously take advantage of the storage areas to, dump off some weight in Portaferia, Velia, or Ilya, for example. But the how you want to go about that is something that's a little bit more advanced and something that you'll get a feel for as you start to trade. The next thing I would actually mention is you want to get a second boat. Now, this is specifically to hold your T5 items to trade at Hakoven Island, which has the highest rate of return per T5 every refresh. And you'll hear a lot of players saying, well, asking at what point do I want to trade at Hakoven? Because sometimes the number of crow coins you get back isn't necessarily worth it. So if you consider the raw silver value of a T5 item, it breaks down to what's essentially 100k silver per crow coin. So if we convert over, 5 million is roughly equivalent then to about 50 crow coins. Now normally most players don't trade at anything below 200, but it's completely up to you. At this point, I personally don't trade for anything below 300, and I'm very happy if I see 4 or higher, or 400 or higher. Speaking of T5s, T5 storage, I would recommend Ankado Harbor as the main hub for where you keep a lot of your T5s, but if you don't want to invest any contribution points there for extra storage, having overflow sites at Ilya and Velia aren't bad ideas. And then what you can do is you can just transport whatever item you just traded over to Ankado, and then it's a short hop from Hakoven back to Ankado with your secondary boat. Even if you have something like a caravel or a sailboat, it's actually not too bad. And the final thing here I would say would be to always explore. Take a look at Grumpy Green for the best sailors. Innocents are the fastest, but you're at the mercy of RNG there by the time they're level 10. There's a nice chart there you can take a look at. It'll has a breakdown basically of what to expect for the maximum stats, as well as the percentage chance that it's going to happen. Also, try to avoid running to 0 rations on your ship, because sick sailors are a big headache, and you want to try to avoid being overweight for too long. So if you're overweight for a short distance to the nearest, let's say, wharf manager, and you can manage to offload some items there, then great. But otherwise, consider, let's say, running instead of 5 out of 5 sailors on your carrack, maybe 4 out of 5 sailors, so you have just enough weight to make the return trip without slowing down to a crawl. And that's pretty much all I can think of right now. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if this is popular enough, I might make a second video for anything I may have missed for this one. In the meantime, happy bartering.